On today's episode, why I'm vibe coding a homeschooling app together with my kids and how do I do it? It's going to be a fun one. Let's rock and roll. Okay, welcome to Life in Flux. My name is Ran Segal. I'm the founder of Flux Academy, designer, builder, person, and on this podcast, sharing behind the scenes of running my business, running my life during these rapidly changing times. Okay, so welcome back to the podcast. I've been taking a little break from the podcast. It's been spring vacation, summer break, spring break for the kids, and we've been traveling a little bit, came back, had tons of work. So skipped a few weeks of the podcast, but now I'm back. It's on my calendar. I want to make sure that I'm consistent and I'm doing this and I'm sharing every single week. So trying to be back on track. And today I want to talk about something that I've been doing for a while, and it's really, really fun, I think, and good in a few different ways, which is building a product using all of the new AI tools. And so I want to share how I got into doing this and why I'm even doing this. So a little bit of context. Some of you might know that we moved to Thailand from Israel 2 years ago. And so when we arrived here, my kids had almost zero English and they got into schools in English. And so about a year ago, I was trying to think, how can I help them learn English? And we were giving them private English lessons, but I was trying to think whether I can use some of the new AI tools that were coming up. And that was about a year ago. So the first, what was trendy back then was kind of like the turning photos into Ghibli and that kind of stuff. And it was just the first time where apps like Lovable and Replit and all of these kind of vibe coding tools were coming out. So I had an idea of trying to create some kind of a simple app that would create stories for my kids based on things that they like. So let's say my older son is into soccer. I would create a story about soccer where he is the main character, and it would create like cool images of himself, like anima Ghibli type photos of him in the story. And then he would basically read it and then answer questions about it. So I started to play around with this idea, and I managed to build something, although it didn't all work fine. And it was kind of like nice to experiment with all of these tools. Specifically, I think I tried Lovable and Replit back at the time, and I think back then Replit was nicer and got me into something, but that app never really took off, although it was kind of like a fun iteration. I worked on it for a few weeks, but I couldn't really get it to fully automate this process. So it didn't really work. I still had to do the photos on my own. I couldn't automate, the app going into the AI to create both the story and the images. It didn't fully work. So that was the first kind of iteration of trying to build an app. And for me, working on these side projects, it's a combination of a couple of things, right? Number one, I'm trying to, what's called in the startup world, scratch my own itch, right? To try to solve a problem that I'm dealing with, right? And back at the time, the problem that I was dealing with is, how can I help my kids learn English? So I tried to do that, but it didn't, and I thought I had a cool idea, but I wasn't able to fully implement it. And after a few weekends of doing it, I kind of gave up. But the other reason that I was doing this is it always gives me a chance to try to play around with new technologies that, sometimes I see everything that's going on. Oh, there's this new tool, there's this new thing. But mostly in my day-to-day job, at Flux Academy, where I shoot YouTube videos, I create courses, and I work with the students, or I manage my company, I didn't really need to use any of these tools like Lovable, Replit to build apps. I didn't really need to do that for my work, or at least I didn't have any actual project to work on it. So for me, working on side projects over the weekend is a good chance to kind of like see what else is out there and experiment with it. Yeah, just to try and learn new tools. It's something that I've always did in the past, you know, even um, back, I guess it was like probably 15 years ago, when I was still working at a startup and I saw somebody else in the startup develop an iPhone app. I decided, oh, I want to build my own iPhone app. So over some weekends, I took online courses in Objective-C, because back then you had to, it was before even Swift, for writing iOS apps. So I learned Objective-C over some weekends, and then I've built my own app. And that skill, of course, I didn't have to do it for my work as a designer, right? I did it just for fun. And the app, by the way, also failed, didn't do anything. But the skills that I've learned about app development and Objective-C were super, super valuable for me down the line when I was collaborating with developers or working with clients. And I had a lot more context about app development and launching apps because I did it myself. So I know that doing side projects for fun is always valuable. So in a way, that was a good excuse for me to try to work on something like this. But also, just like everybody else, you know, my time on the weekend is rather limited. And I'm somebody who, I guess, if things are not moving fast, if I get stuck and I can't solve it, which was basically what happened about a year ago, then I didn't move forward with this project, and it was kind of like put aside for a while. So that was my first kind of like iteration on that. After that, a few months after that, I had this sprint where I thought that I want to start a whole new business around kids education. And so I did like 2 months where I fully got into building a new project that I called Captain Spark. The idea of that project was to basically do kind of like short form videos, like TikTok videos, like animation videos that I would create using AI of some character that I called Captain Spark, who would teach kids about stuff that maybe they're not learning in school. So I created a mini course around money to teach kids about money. And it was the same kind of like logic, like they watch a short form video and then they answer some questions. Now, to do that project, because I wanted to treat it as a real potentially company that I could make money with, I didn't want to use these tools like Replit or Lovable, because one thing that I understood when I try to work with it is that they weren't fully optimized. It didn't feel as smooth as like a real app would, right? And I also wanted to fully control the design. So I went through a design process, which is like I went to Figma to fully design, you know, the UI of the app. And then I wanted to really, really implement it. Yeah, like I would work with a developer. So then I took another course about vibe coding just to learn how to set up, you know, I tried using Cursor to really, really develop this the right way. So, you know, create local development environment, work with Supabase database, and really develop this the right way. And I spent about 2-3 months working on that project, which was fun. By the way, I learned so much, right? I learned about development. I learned about creating videos with AI. Again, so many new skills that I learned that I'm not actually using most of them in my day-to-day work in Flux Academy yet, but I know that it's going to be valuable at some point, right? So I've been working on that project, and that was about 6-7 months ago. I spent 3 months working on it. That I didn't do it as a side project. I literally thought I'm going to create a new business, you know, separate from Flux that I want to dedicate time working on. So I really worked on it for a while. I got like a very basic version working that had this like 4 lessons around the money. So I branded it as like a mini course, and I even launched it and tried to sell it for like $7 and ran Facebook ads and really try to make a business out of this, which was also an interesting experience. And so I've managed to do it, right? I ran some Facebook ads. I even had some paying customers for that app, which I was very excited about. But then I got stuck again. I don't know if you're following all of these people on Twitter who are like, hey, I vibe coded an app and now I'm making a bunch of money. You hear all of these success stories and it sounds like, oh, all you need to do is vibe code an app, and then suddenly you make money and you make recurring revenue, and it sounds like this dream of it's very easy to make money when you're launching an app, when you're launching a sauce or something like this. But the honest truth is that I don't think any business is very easy. So what happened for me was that I actually got great responses in terms of click-through rate on my ads, and really great conversion rate on the pages, but it still ended up costing me $100 to get a client that pays me $7. Now, if you are a big company or you raise millions of dollars from investors, you can go ahead and do this. You can say, okay, I'm willing to spend $100 on a client, even though I'm losing $97 or $93 on each customer, because now I'm getting testimonials, now I'm getting word of mouth, and then eventually I can burn through a lot of investors' money, and eventually I will become profitable. But if you're bootstrapping or you're doing this as a side project like I did, then you can't really lose all of that money. I mean, or you have to set the boundary of how much money are you willing to lose before you start making money. And so for me, when I was at that stage, I realized I have two problems. Number one, I had a basically activation problem, which means a lot of people were buying, but then they weren't actually using it. So they knew that they wanted it, but because it wasn't really an app like at the App Store where you download it, I built it initially as a web app, just because it was simpler to build, then they didn't have like an icon to come back to. I couldn't send them notification. I had all of these technical problems why I couldn't remind them, hey, you paid for this thing. It was also very complicated because I realized it's the parent buying it, but they're not necessarily buying it when they're with their kids and they can immediately use it. So they have to remind themselves, oh, I'm going to do this app, or I'm going to give this app to my kid later on today, and then they forget about it or they can't find the link to it. So that was one, I guess you can call it product problem that I had to face. And the other problem was I had to bring down the cost of acquiring users and start to maybe try different marketing funnels and working on the landing page and copy and all of that. And then again, I got stuck a little bit and decided eventually, you know what, that's too much of a work right now, and I don't want to work on it under stress. So I came back to working fully on Flux, and that was kind of like put aside for maybe like a later date when I come back to it. But I just realized after putting almost 3 months into it, it's not going to be easy money to just like start making like a salary off this app. It's going to take maybe like a year, right? Maybe I was optimistic, thinking in 3 months I'll be able to start making like profitable, get the app to be profitable. Then I realized, well, it's going to take more than that. Maybe it's going to take a year, and maybe even more. There's like no guarantee that within a year you can make it profitable, and there are so many things can change. Like if you're relying on Facebook ads, all of a sudden the price of Facebook ads or the algorithm can change, and a lot of things can change. There is no guarantee in that. And then I was like, you know what? I already have like Flux going and working so well, and it needs my attention, and this is maybe like a distraction, so I better focus on my main business for now. And this kind of like came back to focusing on Flux. So this was, I guess, the second attempt. This wasn't really, again, a side project, but it was me trying to actually vibe coding an actual, I guess, product company in the kids education space. And now we get to like where we are today, which is, as the year went by, is off topic to the vibe coding thing. I've started homeschooling the kids on Friday because they're the schools that they're going to right now. And my kids, just for context, are 9 and 11. The school here is not really challenging for them, and it became a little bit too easy for them. And we kind of felt like that maybe they're falling behind, and if we ever go to a place with great education, we don't want them to be behind. So we decided not to send them to school on Friday, and on Friday basically I homeschooled them. And I do it with either some platforms like Khan Academy is really helpful for math, but the other things I always every week I have to kind of like figure out, okay, what are the lessons that I care about that I think I want to teach them. And it was basically quite an effort for me. I had to spend like my Friday heavily working on it. And so a couple of weeks ago, actually a couple of weeks ago, I came up with the idea of let me try all of these vibe coding tools again and compare them and see where we are. And my idea at this point was like, I want an app that's going to prepare the lessons for me for my Friday, right? And basically, I want to give it a list of subjects that I care about or traits that I care about my kids to learn, right? So subjects can be stuff like, geography, history, maybe philosophy, economics, business, all these kind of things that I want my kids to learn. But in terms of traits, maybe I want them to develop curiosity. I want them to develop problem solving, or resilience, all of these things. So my idea was to have an app that generates the lessons for me, and then the lessons are they read, they have all kinds of interaction, they do the lessons, and I get kind of like a dashboard to see how they're doing. So basically, again, this is another iteration of me trying to itch my own problem. Previously, a year ago, it was how to teach them English. Now I'm just trying to teach them other things. And I wanted to see like how did the tools develop, because a year now in the age of AI, a lot of things are happening. So I wrote like a fairly complex prompt. Let me see if I have the prompt here. Maybe I can just share the prompt that I wrote with you. Okay, so here's the prompt that I use. I'm just going to read it to you. I'd like to build an app for homeschooling my kids. Context: 2 sons, Tommy 11, Reef 9. We are Israelis who moved to Thailand 2 years ago. Kids attend international school, have started to learn and speak English when we arrived 2 years ago. We're currently doing homeschooling every Friday. They learn math on Khan Academy and love it. They keep doing this, but I'd like to build an app that teaches them the rest. The things that I'd like for them to know is reading, writing, general and important knowledge around geography, history, philosophy, science, tech, music, art, economics, money, and business. And I'd like them to develop curiosity, critical thinking, problem solving, resilience, adaptability, and independence. Learning must be fun and include gamification. Each kid should be able to log in on Friday, have a set of lessons, 3 lessons of 45 minutes per homeschooling day. Each lesson, they then rank the lessons for difficulty and fun. And then the next lessons will be created and adjusted for their previous knowledge and feedback. So this is the prompt, and I try to run this prompt in all of the different apps. So I used Lovable, I used Base44, I used Replit, and I used the Google also have like an AI studio something. And so I ran the prompt through them, and I have to say the results weren't impressive, both on the design, like the visual design of the app, but also in terms of the functionality. It was far from working. And I decided, I think that Base 44 was the closest maybe to what I was thinking. So I was like, okay, I'm going to keep working with Base 44 on this project. But then a week or two into that, Claude Design came out. And I was like, you know what? Let me try the same prompt, do the same prompt in Claude Design. And so I used the same prompt in Claude Design. Now, Claude Design, just for context, is basically doing the design. It works as if it was a prototype, but it's not fully developed app. If you really want to develop it later on, then you basically either export it or you can do handoff to Claude Code. But I said, let's give it a try. And I gave it the same prompt to Claude Design, and the results were just like so much better. Both on the visual design, it looked so much better. It also asked me questions in terms of style. Hey, would you like it to be this style or that style? Or so visually, it looked so much better. But also, even though it was just a prototype, it worked. It simply worked. Like the lesson creation that includes AI, the feedback, like everything worked in like, I hate to say one shot, because usually when you hear people on YouTube or something like this say, oh, this tool can one-shot an app and blah, blah, blah. Usually there's a lot of context that needs to happen, and not it's rare that something works or is refined after one prompt. But this got me very, very far. So I was like dumping all the rest of the tools, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this because it just looked so cool. And by the way, here's another thing about doing these side projects. When I just got the result of this, I was so blown away by how cool it was that I screenshot it, and then I tweeted on Twitter. Um, I gave Claude Design a try, and vibe coding a homeschooling app for my kids, and I'm blown away. It's so cool. Like, what a great time to be a creator or a builder. And and first of all, that tweet, I don't want to say went viral, but got a lot of traction compared to my tweets, which usually get like, I don't know, 2,000 impressions. This one got all of a sudden 60,000 impressions. And a lot of people engaged with it and asked questions, got excited. By the way, I always think that, especially in Twitter right now, when you add a visual of some kind of a design, it works really well. And the funny thing is that about 2 days later, I got an email from somebody in our email list that shared with me that somebody from a different newsletter on the topic of AI or something saw this tweet and basically included my project, or basically in their newsletter mentioned Ron Segal is now building a homeschooling app and blah, 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 and used it as if it was a real thing, right? Already. And that thing also got me traction. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is just to show you that if you're working on something on the side, and again, this is currently for me just a side project, I work on it once a week during the weekend, and you share what you're doing, some people might get excited. This can get you traction. This might lead to something else, right? So in this case, people think that this is actually a project, and I can get traction, and I can maybe even validate if there's a demand for this app. Of course, by the way, right now I'm doing it just for myself. I'm not even interested in getting other people to use it, but just by me sharing what I'm working on, it gets people, it gets traction. So this is another benefit of working on side projects. You share what you're working on, and it positions you as somebody who is doing stuff, who's building stuff. It gets you visibility, which is another thing that's great for you, right? So again, got super excited from the results from Claude Code, and then I said, and by the way, when I was doing this, which was basically like a week ago, I don't know, we were just working on the AI web design sprint that we just ran this week in Flux Academy, and I was just learning the whole process that Julian is covering, basically how to work with Claude Code and develop stuff and deploy it. And so I just learned this process in the sprint. I was like, hey, let me see if I can use that process, which, by the way, in the sprint, we're using this process of vibe coding with Claude Code for web design. But I was like, I wonder if I can use it to develop this homeschooling app, because in Claude Code, they just have this one button that's basically hand off this design to Claude Code. I was like, okay, let me try and do that and basically try to do this. And also, again, I don't want to say one shot because nothing is really one shot, but in basically one go, everything worked. Oh, and by the way, one thing that also was very, very fun was that when I was still in Claude Code, I brought my kids in to show them what I was working on and start getting their feedback. And because it was a prototype that already working, and they can already experience the lessons and how it works, and it looked real already, even though it was just a prototype, I got their feedback. Number one, I knew that it's cool, that they like it. Number two, they were like, oh, the background is boring, maybe we add something here. And so it was a really fun experience to have basically the customers getting their feedback as I'm trying to work on this design and do this together with them. And also, I think it's really cool for them to see how we vibe code a project and how we create something from scratch, and how their feedback can be implemented to change the direction of a product. So I think it's quite empowering for them to see how easy it is and how cool it is to build stuff using these new tools. Um, yeah, the prior week we also did a project of like making videos with AI. So I had them write a script and then build a storyboard, and then we went and animated that. So it's very cool. I think that it's very fun to get the kids to experiment with these tools because it's so creative and they can do so many things with it. So back to the story, handed it off to Claude Code. Claude Code developed it, and it just worked. And it just worked. And it's so fast. I remember when I basically built the Captain Spark project 6 months ago when I was trying to vibe code it myself. I had so many errors and so many bugs, and half the time I was working, I was kind of like pasting, the bugs, and I was like, fix this. This is not working. This is not working. And sometimes this experience was very, very frustrating. And in these 6 months where I wasn't, coding and I didn't use any of these vibe coding tools, the progress, I guess, of the models have been so rapid that from, you know, 6 months ago, I thought, wow, it's amazing that I can build an app, but part of the process was very, very frustrating when it didn't work. And now everything just worked. I didn't even have this experience of this is not working, solve this, this is not working, solve this. It just worked. And it became kind of like, Cloud was working and I was going away, and then I was like thinking about it and thinking about this new feature. Well, maybe when I create a new lesson, I want to give feedback to the AI to adjust it. And I just came back every few minutes and just said, how about we do this? And it wrote a new feature. Or how about we do this? And honestly, it became quite addictive to vibe code this project, because everything that you can imagine is very, very easy to do. You just write it down and it just happens. So this is where I am with it. I'm now starting to use it with my kids, and I also have other friends here on the islands who are doing homeschooling, and I want to share this with them. So again, right now this is a side project that is just scratching my own itch and giving me an excuse to experiment with tools and build new skills, and also getting me visibility when I'm sharing what I'm working on, and allowing my kids to see the process of how we're building something together. And potentially I'll be able to help other people here who might, also need this and find this valuable. And perhaps it grows into something more. Perhaps it dies down like the other versions of, well, maybe it's not that useful, or it's not fun, or we get bored with it. I don't know. But I wanted to share how I'm thinking about these side projects, because I think that it's, for all of the reasons that I just mentioned, I think it's really, really a great way to, at least for me, to deal with the overwhelm that we have right now, where there's so many things going on and you're always feeling like you're falling behind, or you haven't tried this, or you don't know what everybody's talking about. And the way to deal with this overwhelm is just to do something for fun, not because you feel like it's not necessarily something that I'll be using again in my business, but I'm just confident right now that, okay, I know how to do this. And again, the pace of change is so fast that, I did a project 6 months ago and I'm doing a project now, and it's like, feels like a completely different world in terms of capabilities. So always be doing, always be creating, always having fun with something. So yeah, that's at least the trick for me. You have to find something it's going to be fun to work on, that you're going to be enjoying, or not, at least not minding to put a few hours during the weekend experimenting with this. And and as I've mentioned, it can be quite addictive to give this a try, because you just build and build and build and build. It also made me think about this, the terms that we're using, right? So I identified as a designer for so many years. That was kind of like my identity. I don't know. I never felt like there's the word entrepreneur and creator. But now I don't know if the word is builder or it's still creator, right? I like creating things from scratch and just, yeah, making things happen. Um, but maybe I need to change how I talk about either myself or Flux Academy, because Flux Academy online school for designers and even more niche like for web designers. Maybe we need to like broaden that. These titles don't make sense in this new world where everybody can go through the process and do everything. Be the designers, be the developers, be the marketers, be the product managers. So I don't know if the word is builders or creators or creatives or whatever, but I have a sense that because the roles and the abilities of everybody is changing, I think the titles are going to be changing as well soon. So if people are scared, oh, designers are dead or developers are dead, it's not. Maybe the titles are dead, but I never cared about titles anyway. All the UI designer, UX UI designer, interaction designer, digital designer. There were always so many titles, and I've never cared about them. I only cared about what I'm able to do and how I'm able to provide value to other people. The titles only mattered when somebody asks you what you're doing. You try to communicate that. So sometimes I was saying I'm a full stack designer, which is what I tried saying. Um, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter as long as you can do a bunch of stuff. And using these side projects, I learn how to do more and more stuff, and I experiment with stuff. So I encourage you to give it a try as well. Try building something, try designing something, try creating something, try scratching your own itch. You don't have to think too much. Oh, it's going to be a business, it's going to be a side hustle, it's going to, well, who cares? Like, just give it a try for a couple of weeks, and you might be putting it aside like I put my previous two projects, and maybe one of them will take off or not. I think it's still valuable even if nothing happens with it. I think it's still valuable. All right, that's all I got for today. Hope to see you on the next one as well. Have a fantastic week. Talk soon.